Yeah, go there. I go.
You ready? Close. Take it. Take it. Alright. With so many mobile phones in the world today and an increased use of texting, you don't really get to see those phone calls anymore. And you really just love it when you get those, don't you? You might be sitting at home watching TV, eating a bowl of ice cream or whatever, and then you get this phone call from Joe Schmo, and it's this guy that you haven't seen in like 4 years and he just wants to catch up. Don't you like those? But then, sometimes those phone calls aren't so good. The next time the phone rings, you answer, and then you first hear sobbing and sniffling, and then someone says, so-and-so has just passed away. Now you feel heartbroken and sad. You were excited for the phone call just a few moments ago, and now you wish you would have never answered. Every year, millions of people pass away. Although it is a tough situation, family members are given the burden of planning their funerals, unless they are part of the slight percentage that did happen to plan their own funeral. But according to MarketResearchWorld.net, access on April 18, 2012, over 70% of Americans believe that people should plan their own funerals to prevent a burden on the family, but less than 10% of people over the age of 55 actually do plan it. Also, 54% of Americans think people should prepay their own funeral, yet only 3% of people do. And an even more astonishing fact is that 36% of Americans believe that it should be the state's responsibility to pay for the funeral. And then according to NFDA.org, a site created by Brockhouse, access on April 19, 2012, it is important to plan your own funeral. It helps the grieving process, knowing that the important decisions figured out for the funeral are all figured out and you don't have to worry about them. So, deaths and grievings are a hard thing to cope with and it's tough for a family to create. So, more and more people need to see the importance of planning and paying for your own funeral to make a tough situation a little easier to deal with. First, I will tell you the current process of planning a funeral and what the family has to deal with. Then I will tell you reasons why to plan for your own funeral. And finally, I will tell you how to start planning your own funeral. So, consider planning your own funeral just in case. You never know what the future will hold. And think of your own families as what it will be like if they passed away. And pay attention to the sorrow that you feel and see how tough it is to plan the funeral. Let's start with a typical family and how they handle a loss of someone close. First, it's tough on yourself. You lost someone you love, a family member, or maybe a close friend. You don't know what to think anymore. And according to HelpGuide.org, accessed on April 20th, 2012, the 4 emotions that people feel are sadness, shock, anger, and guilt. Everyone grieves differently, though. There's no normal timetable for getting over a loss, and there's no normal way to grieve properly. Some people take weeks or months, while others may take years and years. While coping with loss, it is important to remember the myths and facts. One common misconception is if you don't cry, you don't feel saddened over a loss. But really, there's no specific way how to show your sadness. They still may feel sorrow, just not in the same way as you do or others. Now that I've informed you on how people and families grieve, here are some reasons why to plan your own funeral. Not many people think about dying. Not until they get older, or even less people, and even less people then plan their own funeral. But according to About.com, accessed on April 17, 2012, there are 5 important reasons to plan your own funeral. Number 1, you get what you want. When you plan your own funeral, you ensure that you get everything that you want. You can choose if you want buried, an above-ground funeral, or to be cremated. You also get to choose if you want a traditional wake or if you decide to throw a big party for a life well lived. Number 2, you can save money for yourself and for your family. This prevents the emotional spending a family has immediately following a death. Number 3, you pay in advance. Even though it's not entirely recommended, can be used especially when you're trying to spend down your assets for like Medicaid. A more used option though is a trust fund. This allows for it to grow over time with interest. Number 4, lessen the burden of your loved ones. A death is difficult to deal with, and having to plan the funeral only makes things worse. Number 5, peace of mind, knowing that you have everything planned out and you are helping your family out by doing so. And now that you know some of the important reasons to start planning your own funeral, let's see how to get started. Planning a funeral, whether it's your own or someone you know, there are many steps it takes to get it all planned out. According to mywonderfullife.com, accessed on April 21st, 2012, the first thing a family should do is figure out what they prefer in religion and how much money they can spend. Then find a funeral director to discuss some of the other details. Then it's time to figure out the site and the church you would like to have your services at. Then choose a person to run the service. It could be a pastor or a friend of yours. During your funeral, you also need someone to do your eulogy. You could have the same person who's running the service do it, or you may pick another person. And finally, you need to make sure you get yourself a casket, or cremated, or whatever you want to do. You can also choose some of the music if you want to, in case there are certain songs you'd like to have. And you can also pick the flowers if you want daisies or tulips or roses. It's your choice. These are things that won't break the bank for your family, and these things make your funeral special and original to yourself. Now that I have informed you on the grieving process of the family that loses a loved one and that there is no right or wrong grieving process, I have also given you 5 good reasons why to plan your own funeral. And finally, I gave you steps to take on preparing your own funeral. Planning your own funeral is something that is becoming more important to families and crucial to them financially. People in this day and age need to consider this more because you never know what the future holds.